recording. Hi, everyone. I think I'll begin. We are a few minutes past the hour. We might have a few more people join as I'm doing a very short intro. My name is Jeanette Menzies, and I'm Canada's ambassador to Iceland. It is a great pleasure to be here as part of this webinar series. Icelandic ambassador Hlynur Gudjonsson and I started these webinars during the pandemic and determined that it was an excellent way to continue to communicate and raise awareness about issues that matter, issues that are near and dear to both of our countries' hearts. And it's also been a great opportunity to see people. So here we are again. And this year it's a really exciting topic to share experiences related to Iceland's women's strike that took place in October 2023, and to hear from experts in this area from their personal and professional experiences. I don't want to take up too much time, so I'm going to turn the microphone to Sonia, who has a background, Sonia Thorbergsdottir, who has a background as a legal advisor and an adjunct professor at Bifrost University, which is a beautiful university that I had the pleasure of visiting not so long ago. Her expertise is in the area of labor law, employment, and equal rights. So I will turn it over to Sonia. And I want to thank everyone for being part of the webinar series today. We've had over 2,000 viewers over 2+ years of webinars. So this just adds to that great number. Over to you, Sonia.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to this discussion. I'm going to share some slides with you, if I can find them on my screen, that is. Well, I thought it might be best to kind of start out with the history here that we build upon in Iceland, because we had the women's strike here on October 24th, 2023, or last year. But we, of course, stand on the shoulders of great women that in 1975, instigated by the Red Stocking movement in Iceland, decided to declare what we call in Icelandic a Women's Day off, which is usually mentioned in foreign media as a strike, which wasn't at the time. It was a day off, and all women of Iceland participated. It's estimated that at this outdoor meeting they held in Reykjavík on October 24th, 1975, that it was the largest outdoor meeting at the time. And so they decided for a whole day not to do any work, whether or not it was paid or unpaid. And this hasn't been a yearly event since then, but we've had a few gatherings or mobilization through the years. The next one after 1975 was in 85, and we had one in 2005, and then 2010, in 2016 and 2018. And then we decided to do it again and have it through the whole day, because the difference between the last events that have been held throughout the years is then we had calculated the average time that women should stop working during their day. So it hadn't been since 1975 that women have striked through the whole day. We had a major turnout, and I wanted to discuss a little bit about firstly why we did it and what our motives were and demand. To try to put it shortly, it was our feeling that we're in the feminist movement, that there had been a silent backlash after the Me Too revolution. We could feel that had been sparked a great discussion and some changes, but of course not all changes that we wanted to see. But then everything kind of stagnated, and you could see that there wasn't a general discussion about equal rights in Iceland, and also you could feel quite heavily that we live under this aura of equal rights, that because the world views us as the best in the world, many politicians and many of those who are kind of against that there should be any changes. They mention this as a fact. What more do we need? We are the best of the rest for today. So we decided that we wanted to be radical. We wanted to do a whole day of strike again. So we made this proposal that it wouldn't be a Women's Day off, as this has been generally called. We wanted to honor the Red Stockings movement that instigated the first strike in 1975. And they really wanted the day to be called a strike, but it ended up as to be called a Women's Day off. And we could feel quite soon that there was very much interest in it, and usually and historically there are all different groups of women organization, women's rights movements, queer organization, and also within the trade unions that participate in organizing this. And this time around, we had over 40 participating that were then kind of galvanizing people to attend through all their different channels, which is also played a pivotal role in the outcome, we say. In advance, or when we were planning it, we wanted to get the word out why we were doing this, and we also wanted to be very sure that we could spark a discussion on what the status is in Iceland when it comes to equal rights. And one of the things that we mentioned and kind of, made headlines was that at least 40% of women experience gender-based or sexual violence in their lifetime, according to the largest research on the matter we've had here in Iceland, where everyone could participate. And also that women's income is 21% lower than men's income. And then, of course, as you know, there can be more discriminatory factors against different groups within society. So we wanted also to put that in the forefront. And just to name a few examples, we mentioned that 58% of teenage girls have experienced online sexual harassment, that non-binary people do not feel safe in the labor market and are afraid of showing their authentic true selves due to discrimination. And that is another thing that was quite new in this mobilizing, that we were addressing both women and non-binary people. And then to make another example of the facts, we stated that disabled women experience more violence than other women. And based on this, that we are nowhere near better than other countries when it comes to violence, whether or not it's at home or harassment at work, and we are not better than the comparison countries like within Europe when it comes to the wage gap. We chose the slogan, "You call this equality." And we wanted then to kind of, put against a strong line against this aura of equal rights that everyone kind of places on Iceland, that we're the best. So we decided to have a full day strike and could feel very early on that there was a momentum for this. People agreed on what we thought, that there was stagnation and something radical had to be done to spark a discussion and also a movement. And we laid great emphasis on the fact that it should be very inclusive. So it would be women and non-binary, queer, disabled people, and of course of foreign origin, which in Icelandic labor market, they have grown very quickly and are almost 20% now, which hasn't been the fact for, well, it's a very new change in Iceland, so to speak. And we also chose the main themes, which has generally been in some type of discussion within the women's movement for some years now, and which is also a topic of our meeting here today, that the undervaluation of women's work, or the gender pay gap, is connected to gender-based violence. And we could also feel that people after this could make the connection more clearly, and I want to tell you a little bit more about that. We also laid great emphasis on that people would understand that the gender-based violence and gender pay gap are both deeply rooted in society's patriarchal culture, And as I mentioned before, we know that over 40% of Icelandic women or women in Iceland have experienced gender-based or sexual violence in their lifetime. And we can also see from research that women are less likely to be financially independent than men, and that women who live in poverty or experience economic inequality are at higher risk of experiencing violence. And one of the most important things, if you want to liberate women, is of course to ensure their financial independence, because without financial freedom, it's harder to leave violent relationships. The reason that I'm mentioning especially the undervaluation of women's work is due to the fact that we know now here in Iceland, and I can see that other countries have also found out, that the main reason for the reminder of the gender pay gap within their countries is due to the under-evaluation of female-dominated sectors. So we are talking about large groups that are working within healthcare, and of course in education. And we have laid great emphasis on that if we want to win this battle, if we want to ensure equal pay, this has to become a priority. And we believe that during or building up to this day, that many realized that this was a big focus point, that if we want to do something about the gender pay gap, we have to take actions in order to, I'm sorry, my dog just came in here with a little interruption, that we have to ensure that we take action. And that is, according to research, to have a job evaluation system in place. And the most important factor behind that is also to ensure that these groups that are working then within the state, that their jobs are being compared across different workplaces, given that they're the jobs of equal value. And hopefully I will get a chance to go further into this a little bit later on in the interventions. One thing I also wanted to mention is, of course, these groups that I mentioned that are working in healthcare and education, etc., they could not participate, all of them, during this day. So we decided to have a social media campaign for them so they could participate in another way, under then the hashtag indispensable. To try to gather up kind of what the discussion, what sparked the greatest topics of discussion during the day and the aftermath, is of course we were making the invisible group of non-binary people more visible. There was a lot of discussion about the mental load or unpaid work at home that women still have the majority of the responsibility for, and how we could change that. Again, that the main reason for the gender pay gap is due to the undervaluation of female-dominated sectors, and we could feel a great solidarity with them. And many mentioned, who were asked, why did you participate in this day, is they referenced that it was because of solidarity with those who were in female-dominated profession. It also sparked a discussion about sexism at the workplace in general, and patriarchy, which was good as well. I was told to have it very short, so I thought I would have our demand from the meeting in the slides. So if people want to have them sent to them, you can. But I think I will skip reading them out loud and just go further into it if someone has any questions. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for that really great overview of the thinking behind the day and some of the factors that you were considering. I just wanted to share a few words about my own experience with the women's strike. As soon as I knew that it was happening, a number of us ambassadors here connected to make sure that we were all approaching this the same way to allow for women to attend. And that was interesting because as ambassadors, we have that authority to determine in exceptional cases when people don't need to be in the office. Otherwise, we're often bound by rules set elsewhere. So we have that authority to do that. Myself and the other women of the embassy staff, we're a tiny embassy, but the few of us, we went and participated in the day. But what was interesting is that the men from our office also participated in their own way because the office, the building that we're in, is owned by the Women's Association. And the men in the office, including my colleague Xavier, who's on the line, were asked to participate by serving coffee and kleiner to women that were on their way to the strike. So, and I understand BBC and other media outlets were in the area at the time. So we also managed to have our Canadian flag in some of the footage unintentionally. But certainly what I found really moving about the strike, there were a few things. Obviously the number of people, the singing was just incredible. Hearing and being part of all that singing was just so moving. And I personally appreciated the focus on the experience of women of foreign origin in Iceland. And of course, that is what connected me to Alice Olivia Clark, who you'll hear from later on, and her very powerful words at the end of the remarks. So I'll now, we will have more time for questions. And Sonia, I know you're part of the panel as well, but I would like to now introduce Auður Edda Jökulsdóttir, who's the Special Envoy for Gender Equality at the Icelandic Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And she works hard on promoting the rights and empowerment of women and girls through Iceland's foreign policy. Over to you, Edda.
Do you hear me? Yes? Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. And Sonia, thank you for your great briefing. I also was in your site event in New York during CSW last March, and it was a full house and extremely powerful to be a part of that. And I can also say I was downtown together with our Prime Minister and many other ministers, I believe, on that day in October. So you managed from the grassroots, the powerful grassroots, to have all of us going out on the street. Also the leadership in Iceland. So I am honored to be able to introduce the panelists who are four, and Sonia will be one of them. Each of them will give a short intervention first, and then I will perhaps have a question to each of them, and then we open up for Q&A for all of you. So I will start with you, Senator Marilu McFedran, a proud Manitoban. That is amazing. Lawyer, author, and educator, champion of human rights and advocate for equality and diversity. Appointed as member of the Order of Canada, the highest civic honor in '85, for your contributions in strengthening gender equality protection in Canada. You were appointed to the Senate of Canada in 2016. Founder of several women's rights initiatives related to the rights of diaspora women, education, reproductive health, and action on violence against women and children. It's amazing to have you with us today, and I invite you to give your short intervention.
Thank you very much for the welcome, Edda, and thank you, Sonia, for the outline of the incredible activism by, I hope I get this correctly, the Spracher of the women, the incredible activist women of Iceland, and Ambassador Menzies. Jeanette, thank you for suggesting me for the panel. Let me begin by telling you that I'm in my office, my Senate office, and that means I'm on Parliament Hill. But probably the most important thing to say about Parliament Hill in Canada is that we are situated on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe First Nations. We are here as their guests. It is really an honor to be able to respond to the comments that have been made so far, and there are a couple of brief points that I want to make. I'm setting my timer so that I don't go over time on this. I think that underscoring everything that we've learned about the strikes in Iceland and movements, social movements in every country where women mobilize, is that no woman is free until all of us are free. And we see this over and over again, even in privileged societies like Canada. Research done by a range of feminist scholars, but I'm going to highlight both Hatun and Weldon because of the longitudinal research that they have done now over a more than 20-year period, finding that of many factors that actually reduce violence against women in a country, it is the vitality and the viability of the locally based feminist, activist, civil society organizations. When they have resources, when they are mobilizing, when policies and laws that government pass and bring in actually implement, we actually have evidence that the rates of violence go down for most women. In Canada, not all women, because even where we have seen, as a result largely of the current government, the Trudeau government, very major changes and a huge increase in investments relative to previous governments, we do not see a corresponding decline in the rate of violence against Indigenous women in this country. And this tends to be the case country after country. One of the other truths that comes out of the research on feminist activism is that you cannot have effective transnational, international, multilateral effects unless you have healthy, strong, local civil society organizations that have a pathway, a communication route into their governments, where you have a responsiveness and a reflection of that input in the international or multilateral environments. And I'm just going to quickly highlight the relevance. Don't think I'm saying that this system is perfect, and don't think I'm saying that it's all about the UN, because that's definitely not what I'm saying. But we can see at some direct connection, excuse me just a sec, between what happened at the Women's World Conference in Nairobi in 1985, what happened at the Beijing Women's World Conference in 1995, and now next year we're coming up to Beijing plus 30. These international norms make a difference at the local level. I'll close there.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Marilu, for this and for reminding us of the importance of those big norms in international cooperation. This is extremely important. I wanted to invite the other panelists to speak shortly as well, and then if I may ask you a question afterwards. Next, Þorbjörg Sigríður Gunnlaugsdóttir, Member of Parliament for the Liberal Reform Party, Viðreisn, and prior to that worked as a district prosecutor in the area of gender and sexual violence, and also as the political advisor to the Minister of Social and Gender Equality Affairs in Iceland. Þorbjörg, it would be great to hear from you.
Hi. First, I would like to thank for the opportunity of visiting you here online, and also Sonja for her good words. My focus is focused on Iceland and our status and Icelandic situation. We are, as many of you know, when we look at the World Economic Forum, at the top regarding gender equality. And I think at the political arena, this is a fact we are all very, very proud of. However, here in Iceland, I would say this title comes with certain dangers. We see it more and more, I would say, in politics and here in Parliament. And my worry is that not the least we see this with the younger members of Parliament and women, that there's this notion that we have reached a goal, that we have reached gender equality. And that notion, of course, undermines politics of equality, and not only politics of gender equality, but all politics of equality. And what I always try to stress is that, firstly, we haven't reached the goal of gender equality. Our numbers and our reality is good compared to many others, but we have not reached the goal. And also the point of what we hear here in Iceland, that what remains to be received is something that will just happen over time. And there I also always stress that the goals that we have reached, we didn't reach just by waiting or just by time, but with active politics, active policies, active lawmaking. And as a lawyer, I always think of laws and attitudes in society as a cycle of use. Attitudes impact laws, and laws can also impact attitudes and views. I strongly believe in using law as a tool for social change, because that we can do. That we did with the equal pay certification, that we have done with active policies regarding parental leave, independent rights for fathers, that we have done with policies of relatively inexpensive daycare, etc., etc. So I would say ambitious policy, ambitious laws, and a constant awareness of we can and have to do better. Here we have reached, we have the wage gap numbers there looks better and better every year. But the big battle now is the segregated job market. You know, that remains persistent. We still see very different choices in regarding education and careers, and this, of course, impacts equality when the reality is that we do not value the work of women in certain professions. So I think that will be my first thoughts on this, and then I look forward to continuing the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Þorbjörg. And then we will go to Alice Olivia Clark, an artist and designer of Canadian origin, but has lived in Iceland for the past 30 years and now runs Tira, the Icelandic design shop, and is a part of the women grassroots organization that is actually over 10 years running now. So Alice, it would be great to hear from you. Maybe you want to unmute, Alice.
Okay, Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, again, I just wanted to say thank you to Canada, to the embassies, both Icelandic and Canadian, because this is now, these are my people, and also Ottawa, which is my hometown. And it's wonderful to be coming to you from Hafnarfjord in Iceland, and from my store, and just showing that what one can do, what foreign people can bring to the market. And it was such an honor to take part in the women's strike. I like to call it a strike because that's so powerful. And it was just wonderful to see how incredibly it was so peaceful, it was so powerful. And we were there speaking for such a large stage. It wasn't only for Iceland, it was for so many people. And I've noticed a lot of people, exactly the people on the panel are mentioning how it's the young women, it's the young non-binary people, it's exactly the disabled or otherly able. And these are all people who I partly wanted to speak for when I was up there as a foreign woman. And it's incredibly, it's one of the things that I noticed was that there were many like Facebook pages, and people were writing, I'm in a privileged position that I speak both languages. And with the Icelandic people, everyone was being so strong and everyone was wanting to take part. And then when it came to some of the foreign pages, they would say, I would be reading, and it would be, why would I go? Why would I go to this meeting? Why would I go to this big meeting of all of these people where everyone needs to be represented? And the thing is that we're not there yet. People are afraid of losing their jobs. People are afraid of deportation. People are scared. And that was one of the reasons when I was asked, I still get the thing of, why would they ask me to go up there and speak? But obviously I hit a note, and it is the thing of, why not me? Why not all of these people? Why not all of these new people who have come onto the market? And why just quite simply, why not? And it's wonderful to be part of women. After doing the speech, I became a deputy in Women of Multicultural Ethnicities Iceland. And they are a very strong support group for women. And it is incredible. It's particularly their peer support system that they have, which is mainly volunteer. It is all volunteers, and it's a safe space for women to reach out. And that's what we need. We need for women to be able to stand behind and back each other and be there for each other.
Thank you so much, Alice. This was wonderful, and you certainly already are a trusted woman in Iceland, and you inspired everyone. We all got tears in our eyes listening to you speaking in Icelandic on that big stage like you did that day. So you are extremely powerful person here in Iceland today, and wonderful to hear from you. I will ask you a question later on, but I thought maybe I should turn to you again, Senator Mari-Lou, with your background as a senator and decades of powerful work furthering gender equality in Canada, and having participated many times in the Reykjavík Global Forum Women Leaders Summit that we have held in Iceland for 6 years now. Could you perhaps translate what happened here in Iceland last October to the Canadian context? Would such a strike perhaps take a place in Canada as well? And if so, what would be the goals? Would they be the same as in Iceland?
Well, I think there's no doubt whatsoever that, strike or not in Canada, there is a very strong collective consensus across this country that there is a necessity for economic independence and justice for women, tied directly to reducing the rates of violence against women. No question about that whatsoever. There's also, I think, no question about the need to be intersectional, to understand the interconnections. Alice has made the point about women, people living with disabilities, people who are non-binary, gender diverse, people who have neurodiversity. I mean, the whole range of ways in which we as human beings are categorized and labeled, and how important it is to both recognize and respect differences, but also identify where the collectivity is, where the commonality is. And as I said at the beginning of our remarks, to understand that those of us who have privilege, that does not represent any genuine equality in a society. And we need to keep reminding ourselves that we're talking about substantive, everyday lived rights. We're not talking about just the rhetoric that may come out. And to the question about a strike in Canada, well, we are very different countries. We are 40 million people. We are a country built on settlers, on immigration. We only have it is our First Nations who from time immemorial have guarded this land and cared for this land, and the rest of us are immigrants. And the physical geographic distance in Canada also plays quite a role in terms of whether there would be the equivalent of a national strike. My own sense is likely not, but that in some ways we have versions of this in movements that are both national in nature, but as I pointed out earlier, they don't happen unless there's strong local activism and resources at the local level. And I'll just give one quick example in the Canadian context, and that is it was work of Canadian grassroots organizations like the Feminist Alliance for International Action, FAFIA, and the Native Women's Association of Canada, that combined with many other women's organizations and equality-seeking organizations, convinced the government in 2015, the first year of the Trudeau government, to create a national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited LGBTQI individuals in this country, with a focus on the violence. And I think that's a demonstration of the kind of difference that this sort of grassroots activism can truly make.
It certainly is a celebration of the grassroots movement that we have here today with Sonja's great opening presentation and what we are discussing here. Well, Þorbjörg, we are talking about gender pay gap and how it perpetuates violence. With your background as an MP and a former prosecutor in this area, and the political advisor to the minister who introduced actually the legislation on equal pay certification, helping us to close most of the gender gap in the past few years. Would you agree with those in our country today that argue that we should abandon the equal pay certification system because we are almost there? And is it too burdensome for the companies to implement this? Please elaborate on that a little bit, and if you can, with the connection, because as a former prosecutor in this area, it would be really great to hear your words on that.
I would almost want to ask you to guess if you think I want to abolish this legislation. No, I don't think we should abolish it. Then, as a prosecutor, I would say that I often feel that legislation for gender equality has a higher burden of proof than other laws. And we have many extra arguments put forward when we talk about gender equality. Yes, it's costly for companies, but so are taxes, and so are green policies, and so are human rights. And yeah, it's but the benefits are more than the costs. And this did lead to interesting discoveries within companies, in banks, for instance, where unintentionally they had implemented all sorts of criteria which led to similar job positions by women and men not leading to the same outcome regarding salaries. And I also think it has to do with a higher or heavier burden of proof when even feminists say that since the equal pay certification does not solve the issue of the segregated job market, we should abandon it. But these are two separate issues. This is, in my view, an obvious first step to take. And then we continue our fight in Parliament by discussing why is it that teachers and health workers, jobs that are in majority carried out by women, why are they paid, or why are they valued as they are? And my party has in Parliament implemented proposals on discussing this and viewing what it is that lies behind and tackling how we could actually address this. And I was happy to see the name of this meeting or conference, because I am absolutely convinced as a former prosecutor that there's a very, very strong connection between the economic status of women and their possibilities of escaping violence in their home, but also not only escaping it, but not experiencing it in the first place. And sometimes when we discuss like divorce rate here in Iceland, and that is always put in a negative context, so many that the percentage of divorce is too high. I would say that's also a reflection of the possibility of women deciding to raise kids alone, and this they can do because they are economically independent. So like this cycle is very, very, very obvious to me. So one way of tackling violence against women is continuing with legislation and policies like equal pay certification, like a political discussion on how we value paid and unpaid work of women, that we can't tackle violence just with the criminal system. That will never do anything else than just addressing violence that has already occurred. But the goal has to be to prevent it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Þorbjörg. You put it there right on the table, what we actually wanted to discuss today, and that's wonderful. and you have the perfect background to discuss these things. Alice, I was wondering, could you elaborate on that day a little bit when you were standing on that stage speaking Icelandic and you had 100,000 people in front of you? You were trusted 100% to be there. What was your message? And maybe you could elaborate a little bit on your work with women, this grassroots organization, Women of Multicultural Ethnicity Network in Iceland, how you see yourself working on that in the next few years.
Well, if we're going on to that day, that was, as I said before, it was so incredible. It was so peaceful. I've never felt safer, which is such a wonderful thing as women to have, and women and non-binary people, that we had this moment, and there were so many people, and it was so safe. I just felt so incredibly entrusted, and it was just a great experience. And I am very fortunate because I'm not only from Canada and Iceland, but I'm also my parents are immigrants from Barbados. And these are all very strong female societies. And it was really something to just be standing up there and just speaking for all of those, and then also speaking for the people who are here and people who wouldn't have a voice or maybe exactly are afraid to say something. But with women, it's going to be interesting to follow it. There are people who are in much bigger, who are in the main, on the headline of women, and it is incredible the amazing work that they've been doing. They've been doing things like martial arts classes because of violence. So they've been making sure that they have these classes. They've been talking about to different schools, education, childbirth, and how that's affected when it's a person of foreign origin, and different classes for entrepreneurs, which I find that one very interesting, as I've had my own companies and businesses for almost 20 years, over 20 years, and in Iceland, and it's so wonderful to see that they take the stronger women, the women who have the background, the education, the language, and put it there for the other women to be able to use it, to ask the questions, to give them a safe space where it's not all fun and games, but it is. Sometimes, there's all these different wonderful events, but it's also a place that when people do need the help, that they can go there. And it's very interesting to look into it. And
Alice, I just wanted to say it's good that you mentioned this, because we often say when we tell the story from Iceland about gender equality, how important it is to have strong role models. So, for those who are newcomers here, to have strong role models like yourself and other strong women participating in Women, the grassroots organizations, this is amazing. Because for us in Iceland, of course, when Vigdís Finnbogadóttir, as I think you know, when she was elected to be the first woman president of Iceland and a single mother, this was such an amazing moment for us, and I think it laid out somehow what came later. But thank you, Alice.
Yeah.
I just wanted, because we are getting short of time,
Yeah.
if I may just give you, Sonja, the word now, because you have now listened to the other panelists, and maybe you want to comment on something that they said, or come with further questions. And for me, it would, of course, because you're such a strong role model actually in Iceland now, for other women. And also it was so great to see how with the strike you took up the non-binary part very strongly, and this is actually what our government is doing as well. So it has been coming much stronger into our foreign policy work, also as we had the presidency of the Council of Europe, for example, and this was rather new on that front. So you are also inspiring us with our policies, as Þorbjörg and Marlu were also mentioning how it all interrelates. But please, if you want to comment on their words or ask further before we open up for Q&A. And it would be good to know if you could say, in your view now, with your experience and knowledge on this, what would be the single most important step you would sort of recommend government to focus on if they want to very quickly reach full gender equality in their countries? Just a small question.
Thank you so much. I think we would need at least an hour more to kind of touch upon everything I really want to discuss with this great group. And I have a few things that I wanted to mention. And also I'm very curious, and thank you, Marlu. I'm very interested in hearing more about this research that you mentioned. And if we run out of time, I really want to kindly ask you to maybe put the titles of the authors or the name of it in comments so I can read up on it a little bit more. And then I'm not sure that this is kind of very different points and in no special order of line, but I wanted to mention, because of what both Marlu and Þorbjörg mentioned, is that one of the great important things that a women's strike like this has is, of course, empowerment. And after the 1975 strike, we have had at least 2 women telling how they left their abusive husband because of the empowerment that they felt being there in solidarity with other women. And I think that also because Þorbjörg mentioned, there is a kind of a gap between the generations. And I feel that also, as you mentioned, that the younger people feel that we have gained much more close to reaching full gender equality than maybe those who are older. And I think that is due to also the fact that maybe we have kind of slept on our guard here. We have to keep the discussion live. We have to raise awareness. We haven't gotten there yet. And there's always, of course, the hazard of a backlash. And I think that we're feeling that. And I mentioned that we're having kind of a silent backlash. And when we were placing forward the numbers on harassment and violence against young women or children, I mean, many were kind of, they didn't believe us at first because they were so aghast about it. And if you don't even know the status, there's no way that someone will reach actions on it. So I think, again, I mean, we have to have it radical, we have to have a movement, a grassroots initiative. But then again, as they mentioned, that also legislation and international laws have a very high effect on these matters. I'm hoping that there are more that kind of are pushing the different subjects, as you mentioned, Edda. Of course, we can't see kind of the effect still of a strike like this, but we're hoping that it will come in the months and the years to come. But I have to say that my main hope is because that many believe that the most pivotal steps in order to reach gender equality, they're still kind of stuck in the second wave of feminism. They are still talking about high positions or power positions. And in that way, that we will reach full gender equality. And when we were announcing that we would have a women's strike, many kind of asked this question, but we have so many women in power positions or positions of power in Iceland. Why are you doing this? And we said, well, not all of them are feminists. And that is, of course, also of great importance, that you have this high on your agenda and make it a priority. Also, one side of the coin of the connection between violence and the gender pay gap is, of course, if we discuss women who are in abusive relationships, do they have any possibilities to have a career in the labor market? And we can also see that those who are most likely to not be able to work is due to some kind of history of violence in their lifetime. So this is a big financial thing that we also have to discuss, because many have this reasoning that has been mentioned by the other panelists. It costs too much to invest in actions to ensure gender equality, but it costs us also a lot to have this status of discrimination. And I'm hoping also that people will understand that this wave of feminism, this movement that we are trying to create here now, is with the emphasis on feminism for the 99%. The power position or lean in feminism is over. We're on to the next phase. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonja. That was amazing. Now we started a bit late. I don't know how pressed with time you are, but we should be closing the session very soon. But I really wanted to invite some of our guests, maybe one or two of them, to come with questions, but we need to keep it very brief. So do we have, you see here in the chat from Nancy Tarr, what is being done in terms of alcohol and drug abuse? Where can the women go with the children? Are there safe houses? I have talked to women in Iceland about the issue, so could anyone grab that? Is there anyone good to answer that question?
Sonja, do you want to start?
You can start and I can follow up.
Well, I just wanted to mention that we have, I don't know if the word is a safe house in Icelandic, but we have a shelter for women and their children that is mostly used by families or women and their children in regards to domestic violence. My experience within the system is that that is very often connected to alcohol abuse. I don't know how strict they are about the use in instances where there is only alcohol abuse and drug abuse. But then, of course, we also have another option called Bjarkarhlíð. So we do have a few options. I would also like to add, and I think this is a part of the success story in gender equality in general, that because our population is what it is, 400,000, a bit less even, young women, for instance, in the workforce or young women going through divorce or are very, very often surrounded by family and family members. This I understood better when I moved to New York for studies in law, that is a special element of the closeness in our society. But these two options I would mention first.
Do you want to add, Sonja, or are we good?
I think we are good on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was amazing, Björk. But there is a question from Judy regarding how many prosecutors for gender-based violence are there in Iceland? I realize this is after the fact, but what happens to usually men who have been violent after what happens? Yeah.
The statistics depend very much on what kind of violence we are discussing. I did a research on all reported rape cases in Iceland in 2008 and 2009. In total, I think we were talking about from the first step of filing a charge in police and then sentencing, I think around 15%, 15 or 18%, something like that. I don't remember exactly, around 15. It's been a few years since I did this. The big barrier there is getting the case into the courtroom. If it reaches that barrier, the conviction rate is around 75%. So it depends on the reality of domestic violence. Is we have a very high conviction rate, but I think my feeling is that very, very few of these cases are filed to police. And that, of course, has to do with the Icelandic court system and justice system dealing with the same problems, like all of them worldwide. A very understandable mistrust by women. And then, especially when it comes to sexual violence and rape cases, the burden of proof. Yeah, I hope this answers the question somewhat.
Thank you, Þorbjörg. It's good to have you here as a previous prosecutor as well from those days. Thank you so much. I think we might want to go to the last question, which is from Justin. I'm wondering what is being done for the protection and safety of women who are refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants in Iceland, being subject not only to sexism, but also to xenophobia. What are we doing to ensure their safety?
Well,
yeah.
Okay.
Alice?
Yes, can you hear? Okay. I'm going to take on a tiny bit of that because that is a very loaded question. But it's exactly, I mean, of course you have the Red Cross, but then you also have, as I said, you have women, the organization, and they have some of the most amazing lawyers. And they're not only Icelandic lawyers, they are also foreign lawyers. They are foreign women who specialize in these cases. So, and these are people who, it's strange to say, but that look like us, that sound like us, but can also fight for us where needed and with Icelandic people, and to allow people's voices to be heard. And there are a lot of amazing people like that who have been like coming here and studying here and learning. So it's yeah, that's where I can start on that. And then I know there's some lawyers and prosecutors who might be able to take on a bit of that.
Thank you so much, Alice. So Þorbjörg or Sonja, would you like to elaborate on it, or are you saying?
Not really. This is not
no. So what I can say is that, of course, Iceland is this little island in the North Atlantic, and it was for such a long time a very homogeneous society, and it has changed tremendously in a short period of time, especially in the past few years, where we have been taking so many more refugees in. This has been a hot topic in politics in the past a few years. And I know that all our systems are trying to figure out how to work individually, and also how they could coordinate a little bit better with all steps on the way. So I think, and of course in Iceland, like in other countries, we have also xenophobia, and we have kind of a way to go to embrace the newcomers better. There we could probably learn a lot from Canada, and I'm looking at you, Marilu, and because it's it's really and we are also in our foreign policy advocacy, we try to be rather humble, and we know that we can do so many things better. If the world wants to look towards Iceland as being a kind of the furthest on that road to gender equality, that is beautiful. But we know we still have a long way to go, and this is one area that we are really working on. I'm actually drafting, working on the 4th National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security now, and one of the actions is about different actors coming together to try and better coordinate actually how we are embracing women coming into the country as refugees or for similar reasons. So we are working on it, but I think this has to be the last question we answer today. I'm so thankful for your time, Marilu, Sonja, Þorbjörg, and Alice. And Janet and Hlynur, you are a great team. Thank you so much for inviting all of us to be a part of your event today. And I now give the word to Hlynur Guðjónsson, our wonderful ambassador in Canada, to close up.
Thank you, Edda. Just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today for the Gender Pay Gap and Violence, two sides of the same coin event. This was recorded. We will share with everyone along with the slides from Sonja, if that is okay with Sonja. But at the same time, I wanted to thank our partners in the webinars that we do. We do 4 to 6 webinars per year. The Icelandic Arctic Cooperation Network and Polar Knowledge Canada. To that end, thank you everyone for attending, and we will see you at our next webinar. And have a great summer.
Thank you.